Seated at the breakfast table, my morning routine felt like any other workday, with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the rustle of the morning paper. Janet, my wife of 5 years, was still getting ready in the bedroom, her presence a comforting constant in the rhythm of our daily lives. As I skimmed the front page, my eyes fell upon the headline Carmine had predicted the night before. He always had a knack for foreseeing things, and this time was no different. The news article reported the grisly discovery of a man found executed in his garage. Robert Tolson, an employee of Carlos Realty Agency. The details were chilling, thumped and strangled, with the investigation just beginning and no suspects in sight. My thoughts drifted to Janet, who also worked at Carlos Realty. It was no coincidence, and Carmine's predictions had proved accurate once again. I folded the paper and set it on the table, where Janet always sat, a sense of foreboding settling over me. Sipping my coffee, I couldn't help but reflect on the events leading up to this moment. Janet entered the breakfast area, radiant as ever, yet there was a palpable distance between us. Our marriage had been strained for the past year, and her increased working hours had only widened the gap. Her arrival brought no exchanged greetings, no warmth, only a silent acknowledgement before she turned her attention to the paper. Her reaction was immediate, the shock evident in her expression as she read the article about Robert Tolson's homicide. She rushed to the bathroom, overcome with emotion, leaving me to contemplate the unraveling of our marriage in silence. As she retreated, I realized there was nothing left to say, no words that could mend what was broken between us. With a resigned sigh, I gathered my belongings and made my way to the garage, the weight of our crumbling relationship heavy on my shoulders. In that moment, I knew that whatever lay ahead, it was a path we would have to navigate alone. Allow me to introduce myself, John Canella, known as JC to my friends. Raised in the Italian section of Pittsburgh, my youth was marked by mischief and camaraderie with a group of young Italian boys. Carmine Vitalo, my closest confidant, was like a brother to me, and together, we navigated the tumultuous streets of our neighborhood, forging bonds that would shape our futures in unexpected ways. We were two peas in a pod, Carmine and I, same age, same group of friends, but with one crucial difference: brain power. Now, I'm not saying Carmine was dim-witted or anything, far from it. It's just that trouble seemed to have a magnetic pull on him, and he had a knack for getting caught by the law, unlike yours truly. Take one evening, for example, when we decided to break into a warehouse near the docks, hoping for a quick score of MP3 players to sell for some cash. As luck would have it, the security guards were onto us from the get-go. They must have spotted us sneaking in through a side window because they were lying in wait as we tried to make our getaway with our loot. One guard snagged Carmine, while another made a grab for me. In the heat of the moment, I shoved a box into the guard's face and then launched myself at the other, landing a solid blow to his head. With Carmine freed, I urged him to run, and run he did, leaving me to face the music. It didn't take long for the second guard to overpower me, and before I knew it, I was on my way to the police station, bruised and bloodied. The cops had a good laugh at my expense, and I spent a couple of weeks in jail followed by probation. Throughout it all, I never once revealed Carmine's involvement in the heist. He called me multiple times, apologizing profusely for leaving me behind, but I assured him it was water under the bridge. Given his rap sheet, I could have faced much harsher consequences if he had been caught. Needless to say, my parents were livid and embarrassed by my arrest. My dad's leather belt left me nearly bleeding, and they decided it was time for a change. Off I went to St. Peter's Catholic High School, where the nuns and priests took it upon themselves to straighten me out. By senior year, I was a changed man, thanks in no small part to the guidance of one of the priests who encouraged me to pursue a different path. I bid farewell to the neighborhood gang and set my sights on higher education. I worked my tail off and earned a degree in human resources from Penn State. Landing a job with a reputable company was a breeze, and for once, my parents looked at me with pride. Despite my dalliances with various women in college, I wasn't ready to settle down until I met Janet Vicano, 3 years after graduating. We crossed paths at a seminar for HR representatives, and something clicked. I got her number, promising to call, and it seemed to light up her world. Janet was unlike anyone I'd ever met, and little did I know, She would change the course of my life in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. In the intricate tapestry of relationships, Janet emerged as a multifaceted personality, at times embodying the complexity reminiscent of Chris Costner's character in The Three Faces of Eve. Yet, amidst her depth, her stubbornness stood out as a defining trait. Once her opinion was formed, it became unshakable, regardless of its alignment with reality. Our dating journey, a blend of intimacy and distance, unfolded over time, marked by a deliberate avoidance of physical intimacy within the inaugural year of our courtship. Delving deeper into Janet's past unveiled a poignant narrative of abandonment. Left as an infant on a church pew, she traversed through orphanages and foster homes, bereft of maternal love and guidance during her formative years. This void left an indelible mark on her psyche, manifesting in the challenges she faced. Despite these adversities, Janet's essence radiated warmth and affection, unparalleled in my experience. Navigating the disapproval of my parents, who cautioned against entanglement with Janet, our commitment deepened, culminating in a modest exchange of vows at our local church. A mutual decision to defer parenthood until stability prevailed underscored our pragmatic approach, though it garnered disapproval from my parents. Trouble infiltrated our marital bliss in the third year, triggered by the corporate acquisition that rendered Janet jobless. Struggling with the loss of a cherished occupation, she grappled with depression, her resilience tested against the backdrop of uncertainty. Although financial stability eluded disruption, the quest for re-employment proved arduous, casting shadows over our domestic tranquility. Amidst the turbulence, Janet's mood oscillated, particularly during her monthly cycles, evoking empathy tinged with frustration. The gradual restoration of her equilibrium mirrored the resilience that defined her essence. With renewed vigor, she embraced her role at Callis Realty Agency, supplementing it with a foray into real estate studies, emblematic of her unwavering determination. In the confines of our bedroom, echoes of strife dissolved in the intimacy we shared, with Janet's ardor igniting our passion. For a span of 9 months, grievances found no voice. As our marital harmony flourished, a testament to Janet's commitment to rekindle our bond. Witnessing her metamorphosis, I basked in pride, cherishing the loving wife she embodied, a beacon of hope amidst life's tempestuous seas. Despite leaving behind my days of running with the junior mafia in high school, I maintained close ties with some of my best pals, particularly Carmine. He was like a brother to me, and our bond remained strong even as we embarked on different paths in life. Carmine had a knack for scoring the best tickets for Steelers games, so I called him up and suggested catching the Steelers versus Raiders game on Sunday. Without hesitation, Carmine agreed, knowing just how to secure the best seats for our favorite team. I also mentioned Janet's upcoming business trip, and Carmine proposed that I spend the weekend with him and the guys, catching up on neighborhood gossip and reliving old memories. Friday morning arrived with a chill in the air, and over breakfast, I casually brought up the idea of reaching Janet while she was away. However, she coolly brushed off the notion, citing her need to focus on networking with influential people during her trip. It was as if she saw me as an annoyance rather than a concerned husband. Despite feeling a twinge of disappointment, I let it slide, and later that day, Janet left for Atlantic City to attend the developers' session for high-rise condominiums near the riverfront. Meeting up with Carmine was like a real reunion. It had been over a year since we last hung out together. We reminisced about our shared past, catching up on each other's lives and enjoying each other's company. The Steelers game was a roller coaster of emotions, despite our team losing in overtime. We drowned our sorrows in beer and laughter, swapping stories and making new memories together. As the weekend unfolded, I found myself relishing the camaraderie more than I had anticipated. Carmine's easygoing nature and genuine friendship provided a welcome escape from the tension at home with Janet. As Sunday afternoon approached, a pang of guilt tugged at my conscience, knowing that Janet was still away on her business trip. However, the thought of returning to the strained atmosphere at home dampened my spirits. I made the spontaneous decision to extend my stay with Carmine for one more night, rationalizing that Janet was preoccupied with her career and wouldn't miss me much. Immersed in the comfort of familiar surroundings and the warmth of friendship, I temporarily forgot about the challenges awaiting me back home. Amidst the laughter and shared experiences with Carmine and the guys, the weight of my marital troubles seemed to lift, if only for a fleeting moment. Yet beneath the surface, a sense of unease lingered, a nagging doubt about the future of my relationship with Janet and the toll our growing rift was taking on both of us. As the weekend drew to a close, I found myself torn between the familiarity and comfort of my friendship with Carmine and the obligations waiting for me at home with Janet. The decision to return to reality weighed heavily on my mind as I contemplated the uncertain path forward in my turbulent marriage. As Saturday night unfolded, Carmine and I found ourselves stepping into the dimly lit ambience of the Sweet Kitty Cat Lounge, situated on the southeast side of town. It was a scene straight out of a mobster movie, reminiscent of the infamous Bada Bing Club from The Sopranos. The air was thick with the scent of perfume and cigarette smoke, and the atmosphere pulsated with the rhythmic beats of music as scantily clad dancers moved provocatively on the stage. Among them was a young woman, barely beyond her 18th birthday, whose alluring gaze seemed to pierce through the haze of the club's dim lighting. Carmine, always one to seize an opportunity, pointed out that she was available for the night, subtly implying that she could be mine for the taking. His words were accompanied by suggestive gestures, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the pull of temptation. However, as I glanced around the club, taking in the debaucherous scene, I couldn't shake the image of Janet's face from my mind. Despite our recent troubles, the vows of fidelity we had exchanged still held weight in my heart. With a sense of resolve, I politely declined the advances of the young dancer, much to Carmine's surprise. He raised an incredulous eyebrow, commenting on my unexpected seriousness about fidelity. In response, I reiterated the importance of loyalty and commitment in marriage, emphasizing that without them, there could be no genuine love or lasting partnership. The following morning dawned cold and bleak, typical of a Pittsburgh winter, yet it failed to dampen the spirits of football fans eagerly making their way to Three River Stadium for the highly anticipated showdown between the Steelers and the Raiders. The rivalry between these two teams ran deep, akin to a modern-day feud between rival gangs. Memories of past games, particularly the legendary Immaculate Reception by Franco Harris, lingered in the minds of fans, fueling their passion for the game. Despite the Steelers' less than stellar season, with a record of 5 wins and 5 losses, anticipation was high for this crucial match against the Raiders. As the game unfolded, the stadium reverberated with the deafening roar of the crowd, each play eliciting cheers and jeers from opposing fans. It was a hard-fought battle, with both teams giving their all until the very end. In the end, the Steelers emerged victorious with a narrow margin of 21-20, securing a memorable win for their loyal supporters. As the final whistle blew and the crowd erupted into cheers, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction despite the lingering uncertainties surrounding my personal life. Yet, as I headed home, the anticipation of Janet's return weighed heavily on my mind. Little did I know, her absence would only deepen the sense of unease that had been growing within me in recent weeks. Amidst the shock and betrayal, a simmering determination began to take root within me. The revelation of Janet's infidelity struck like a thunderbolt, shattering the illusion of trust and devotion that had defined our marriage. It was a stark awakening, forcing me to confront the harsh reality that the woman I loved and cherished had betrayed me in the most profound way possible. As I grappled with the emotional turmoil coursing through my veins, the demands of my professional life continued unabated. The workday unfolded in a whirlwind of high-level meetings and pressing matters, yet beneath the facade of corporate affairs, my mind churned with a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. The impending lawsuit loomed large on the horizon, adding to the weight of responsibility bearing down upon me. It wasn't until the waning hours of the day, amidst the relentless tide of emails and correspondence, that the earth-shattering revelation struck. Buried within the digital deluge was an innocuous subject line that belied the devastating truth concealed within. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, I clicked open the email, expecting nothing more than a light-hearted distraction from the rigors of the day. However, what greeted my eyes was anything but light-hearted. A series of photographs unfolded before me, each one more damning than the last. There, in vivid detail, was Janet, locked in an intimate embrace with another man. The images seared themselves into my consciousness, branding themselves upon my soul with a searing intensity that left me reeling. In that moment, the fragile facade of my marriage crumbled into dust, shattered by the weight of betrayal. Janet's infidelity, laid bare before me in stark, unforgiving clarity, left me gasping for breath, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the deception that had been perpetrated against me. Yet, amidst the tumult of emotions that threatened to engulf me, a steely resolve began to take root within my soul. Anger and rage simmered beneath the surface, fueling a newfound determination to seek justice for the betrayal that had been inflicted upon me. The flames of vengeance flickered to life within me, burning with a fierce intensity that brooked no quarter. In that moment, I made a solemn vow to myself: infidelity and betrayal would not go unpunished, not in my lifetime. Two individuals would pay dearly for the wounds they had inflicted upon my heart, for the trust they had callously violated. But even as I nursed my smoldering fury, questions swirled in the depths of my mind. Who had sent the incriminating email? And what motives lay behind their actions? Were they friend or foe? Ally or adversary? It was a puzzle that demanded unraveling, but for now, my focus was singular: revenge. With a sense of grim determination, I took decisive action, erasing all traces of the damning evidence from my computer and steeling myself for the tumultuous road that lay ahead. In the face of betrayal, I would emerge stronger, forged in the crucible of adversity, ready to mete out justice to those who had wronged me. In the face of Janet's betrayal, the prospect of divorce loomed as a viable option. If she desired to end our marriage, I would have acquiesced without hesitation, allowing us both to sever ties and move on from the wreckage of our union. However, her transgression demanded a response far more severe than a simple dissolution of our marital bonds. My revenge would be swift and merciless, sparing neither Janet nor her paramour from the consequences of their actions. As I left the office, the wheels of retribution began to turn in my mind. Seeking anonymity, I sought out a payphone and dialed an untraceable number, reaching out to Carmine to collect on the debt he owed me. With a sense of grim resolve, I returned home to find Janet already there, a silent witness to my late arrival. Her casual remark about my tardiness served only to further stoke the flames of my fury, as I silently acknowledged her own transgressions. In the solitude of my office, I meticulously crafted my revenge plan, drawing upon the harsh realities of our country's legal system. The plan unfolded with chilling precision: one sentence of death and one of life imprisonment, each carefully tailored to fit the crimes committed against me. I orchestrated each detail with methodical precision, ensuring that my vengeance would be complete and irrevocable. To mask the true nature of my intentions, I orchestrated a series of deceptive gestures, sending flowers to Janet's office and making dinner reservations in her name. Yet, when the time came for our rendezvous, she failed to appear, a silent confirmation of her guilt and betrayal. Her return home brought no solace or explanation, serving only to reinforce my determination to see justice served. The following day, a cryptic message arrived bearing instructions to secure an airtight alibi for the impending night. With a sense of grim determination, I committed the details to memory before consigning the document to the shredder, erasing all evidence of its existence. As the sands of time dwindled, I prepared to enact my revenge, knowing that the hour of reckoning was at hand. That evening, as Janet returned home, I remained ensconced in my role as master of my domain, indifferent to her comings and goings. Her hasty departure served only to hasten the inevitable, as the final moments of her betrayal drew near. In the silence of my solitude, I awaited the culmination of my vengeance, knowing that justice would soon be served, and the scales of retribution would be balanced once and for all. I had known Janet for years, and our relationship had its highs and lows like any other. She was a complex person, sometimes reminding me of characters from movies like The Three Faces of Eve. Her most challenging trait, however, was her stubbornness. Once she formed an opinion, nothing could sway her, even if it was clearly misguided. Our dating experience was a mix of closeness followed by distance, and we refrained from getting too intimate in the first year. Learning about Janet's abandonment as an infant shed light on her struggles growing up in orphanages and foster homes. The absence of maternal love during her formative years undoubtedly contributed to her personality struggles, yet she remained the most affectionate person I knew. Despite my parents' disapproval, Janet and I exchanged vows in a modest ceremony, agreeing to delay starting a family until we were financially stable. However, trouble brewed in our marriage when Janet lost her job due to a corporate acquisition. She battled depression during this time, and while we weren't financially strained, it took her several months to find a new job, one she wasn't entirely enthusiastic about. Initially, Her mood swings and distance strained our relationship, but things improved as she settled into her new role. Our intimacy revived, and Janet became more proactive about her career, even pursuing a real estate course. I was proud of her transformation and cherished the loving wife she had become. However, our happiness was short-lived. My job responsibilities changed after a corporate merger, requiring me to travel more frequently. Janet wasn't pleased with my extended absences, despite my efforts to be home on weekends. As time passed, her coldness towards me grew, and suspicions started to gnaw at our once strong bond. I began suspecting infidelity when Janet missed dinner reservations without explanation. My suspicions were confirmed when I received an anonymous email containing incriminating photos of Janet with another man. The betrayal cut deep, and my initial shock turned into a desire for revenge. While my mind swirled with thoughts of retaliation, I received another email instructing me to secure an airtight alibi for the upcoming night. With a cold resolve, I followed the instructions, preparing to execute my plan for vengeance. The next evening, I left for work before Janet was awake, avoiding any confrontation. Across the street, two men lay in wait, ready to execute the final stage of my plan. As Janet's car came to a stop at an intersection, they moved swiftly, kidnapping her without leaving a trace. Meanwhile, I went about my day with a sense of detached calm, knowing that my revenge had been set in motion. The news of Janet's disappearance sent shockwaves through our community, but I maintained a facade of concern while secretly relishing in my triumph. As the investigation unfolded, I watched from afar, confident that justice had been served. Janet's fate was sealed, and she would pay the price for her betrayal. And as I looked out the window, I knew that I was finally free from the shackles of her deceit, my vengeance complete. The passenger seat was swiftly occupied by one of the men, who took the driver's seat, and the three vehicles departed in rapid succession, the entire process lasting less than 30 seconds. No witnesses were present. Meanwhile, at 11 o'clock that morning, in a branch bank on the east side of town, a woman made up to look exactly like Janet entered and handed a withdrawal slip for $25,000 from our joint account to the teller. She presented a driver's license and passport as proof of identity. The teller took a few minutes to issue the withdrawal in the form of a cashier's check. A guard escorted the woman to her car, noting the license plate as she drove away. At the American Airlines ticket counter, the Janet lookalike approached, presented her photo ID and passport, and received the boarding pass. Flight reservations had been made online the previous night. The first leg of the journey was to JFK Airport, followed by a non-stop flight on number 951 to Rio de Janeiro. The Pittsburgh departure was at 4:45 in the afternoon, reaching JFK, New York subsequently at 10:30 that evening. The American Airlines plane took off, carrying the passenger, Janet Canela, on an overnight flight to Brazil. I waited until noon on Saturday before contacting the police to report a missing person. Surprisingly, Detective Lawrence Backton was the officer who arrived at the house to take the report. I informed him that Janet had returned home at her usual time, but attempts to reach her on her cell phone were futile, as it displayed a non-in-service notification. When I contacted Amanda Stata, one of Janet's close friends at Callis Realty, she revealed that Janet had not shown up for work the previous day and hadn't even called in to report her absence. Detective Backton made cryptic notes in his notepad while occasionally glancing up at me. Eventually, he began questioning the state of my marriage, probing into potential problems that might be related to Janet's disappearance. I reiterated what I had told him after Robert Tolson's homicide investigation. Our marriage was fine, and I couldn't fathom any reason for Janet to voluntarily vanish. He then inquired if I had any involvement in foul play concerning Janet, to which I emphatically stated my love for my wife and my inability to harm her. Lying to the police was a skill I had developed early in life, associating with the junior mafia, and it continued to serve me well. 3 days later, Detective Backton visited my office during business hours, presumably to assess the husband he was dealing with. Once in my office, he sat down and offered a tight-lipped smile, while I wore a distressed husband's expression as I questioned him about any news regarding Janet's whereabouts. Detective Backton's words reverberated in the confines of my mind, each syllable carrying the weight of a devastating truth that threatened to shatter the fragile semblance of normalcy I had desperately clung to. With each passing moment, The reality of Janet's actions sank deeper, entwining itself around my thoughts like a suffocating vine, choking the life out of the hopes and dreams we had once shared. As I sat across from the detective, his expression a mask of professional detachment, I struggled to comprehend the enormity of the situation unfolding before me. The image of Janet, captured on video surveillance, her features etched with determination as she withdrew a substantial sum of money from our joint account, felt like a betrayal of the highest order. It was a stark reminder of the chasm that had opened up between us, a divide so vast and insurmountable that it threatened to engulf me whole. The revelation of her purchase of airline tickets to New York and Rio de Janeiro only served to deepen the sense of despair gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. The abruptness of her departure, without so much as a word of explanation or farewell, left me grappling with a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, disbelief, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. With each passing second, the walls of denial I had built around me began to crumble, exposing the raw, unyielding truth that lay beneath. Janet's disappearance, her sudden abandonment of our life together, cast a shadow of doubt over everything we had shared, our vows, our promises, our love. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving me gasping for air in a sea of uncertainty. Yet, even in the midst of my turmoil, a flicker of determination sparked to life within me. I refused to succumb to despair, to allow Janet's actions to define the course of my life. With a steely resolve, I met Detective Bacton's probing gaze head-on, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. I refused to believe that Janet could be involved in something like this, I declared, my words ringing with a fervent conviction that bordered on desperation. There must be some mistake, some misunderstanding. She wouldn't just disappear like this. But even as I spoke the words, a nagging doubt gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Had I been blind to the signs, willfully ignorant of the truth lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life? The questions swirled in my mind, threatening to engulf me in a maelstrom of uncertainty. In that moment, as I grappled with the shattered remnants of my once stable existence, one thing became painfully clear: the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and uncertainties, a journey into the heart of darkness from which there might be no return. But I refused to falter, to allow myself to be consumed by the darkness. For even in the depths of despair, there remained a glimmer of hope, a flickering beacon that refused to be extinguished. Like a ghost haunting the periphery of my thoughts, her absence felt like a gaping void that threatened to swallow me whole. The uncertainty gnawed at me, a relentless beast that refused to be placated by rationality or logic. With each passing day, the weight of her absence grew heavier, casting a pall over every aspect of my life. As I sat alone in my office, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead providing a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within, I couldn't help but wonder what had led Janet down this path. Was it fear, desperation, or something far more sinister that had driven her to disappear without a trace? The questions echoed in the recesses of my mind, bouncing off the walls of my consciousness with a haunting persistence. Despite my best efforts to push them aside, the doubts lingered like a shadow, a constant reminder of the gaping hole in my life where Janet had once stood. Had I failed her in some way, missed the signs of her unraveling beneath the surface of our seemingly idyllic marriage? The thought gnawed at me, a gnawing doubt that threatened to consume me from within. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, one thing remained clear: I would not rest until I had uncovered the truth. Whether it meant delving into the darkest corners of my own psyche or confronting uncomfortable realities head-on, I was determined to find answers, to unravel the mystery of Janet's disappearance and, perhaps, uncover the hidden truths that lay buried beneath the surface. With a sense of grim determination, I resolved to embark on a journey into the heart of darkness, to confront the demons that lurked within and emerge victorious, no matter the cost. For in the face of adversity, it is often our darkest moments that define us, shaping us into the people we were meant to become. And though the road ahead may be fraught with challenges and obstacles, I would not falter. For I was determined to uncover the truth, to find Janet and bring her home, no matter what it took. I was keenly aware of being followed during my morning commutes and evening returns, my movements meticulously planned from the moment I left work to the time I arrived home, even incorporating grocery shopping into my routine to avoid any suspicion of evasion or concealment. Every other day, I diligently reached out to Detective Ton for updates on my missing wife, Yet each time, he offered no new information, leaving me grappling with uncertainty and anxiety. The Brazilian police's investigation into Janet's disappearance yielded no evidence of her whereabouts after her arrival in Rio, intensifying my sense of helplessness and despair. Later that afternoon, as I indulged in the simple comfort of ordering pizza from Domino's and watching college football on TV, an unexpected interruption shattered the semblance of normalcy in my life. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the pizza delivery guy with my hot pizza in hand. After paying him and offering a customary tip, I opened the pizza box, only to find an envelope resting on top. Curiosity piqued. I retrieved the envelope and unfolded the sheet of paper inside, revealing instructions for the following day. The note directed me to dress for church and attend the 10 o'clock Mass at St. Peter's, with further instructions to slip out the side door on the east side of the church during communion, where a dark Ford Crown Victoria would be waiting outside. It dawned on me that this rendezvous would likely mark my final meeting with Janet before Carlos orchestrated her departure from the country. Carlos had meticulously orchestrated a plan, waiting 2 weeks to ensure the well-documented cover story of Janet flying out of the country served as the only evidence for the police to work on. By establishing a carefully crafted deception, Carlos aimed to mislead the investigation, creating the illusion that Janet was alive when she boarded the plane to Rio, thus thwarting any circumstantial case against me despite the absence of her body. As I lay in the pitch-black confines of my bedroom, haunted by the events of the past month and a half, I couldn't shake the realization that my ancestral roots had stirred a dark side of my personality, emerging whenever I felt disrespected by others. Whether it was a product of nature or nurture, there was no denying the source of my dark impulses. The following morning, as I navigated the crowded halls of St. Peter's during Mass, I remained vigilant, scanning the throngs of parishioners for any signs of surveillance. Sensing no immediate threat, I seized the opportunity to slip out the side door unnoticed, where the dark Ford sedan awaited with its motor running. I climbed into the back seat as the car surged into the bustling streets, the journey punctuated by tense silence. After a brief 10-minute drive, the sedan pulled up in front of a sprawling warehouse building, its imposing facade casting a foreboding shadow over the scene. Stepping out of the car, I approached the open door of the warehouse, where Carlos stood waiting. In that moment, our eyes met, marking the beginning of our first face-to-face encounter. Carlos greeted me, acknowledging Carmine's approval to refer to me as JC before issuing a solemn warning about Janet's altered condition. Despite his caution, I remained resolute, indifferent to Janet's fate and unmoved by the potential distress of seeing her in her changed state. With a steely resolve, I pushed forward, stepping through the doorway into the unknown. Carlos responded to my inquiry about Janet's medication, stating that she wasn't on any but insinuated that she likely wished she were, hinting at the toll her situation had taken on her mental state. He claimed to have kept her lucid and alert at all times, asserting that she was now a broken woman, well conditioned for her new life. Together, we entered a well-lit room where Janet sat tied to a chair in the center. As I circled her, she remained silent, her gaze distant and devoid of its former vitality. Standing directly in front of her, I addressed Janet, informing her that she would spend the rest of her life haunted by the misery she had brought upon herself. Recalling the trials of our marriage, I emphasized the intolerability of her infidelity and the disrespect she and her lover had shown. I made it clear that she would bear the consequences of her actions for the rest of her days, noting that Robert had already met his fate at my hands. Speaking deliberately, I expressed my current disdain for her, highlighting the assurance Carlos had given me regarding her future care, likening it to the treatment of prized livestock. With a tear forming in her eye, Janet offered no response as I turned and exited the room. The Ford sedan returned me to St. Peter's, where I entered just as the 11 o'clock Mass concluded. Afterward, I left the church and drove straight home, a heavy weight gnawing at my gut, demanding to be drowned in a glass of Jim Beam. 3 years have passed since I last laid eyes on Janet, and her memory has faded almost entirely from my life. With no trace of her remaining, I sold the house we once shared, severing the last tangible connection to our tumultuous past. Detective Ton's investigation into her disappearance now sits cold in the case file, while I spend my time frequenting the sweet kitty cat lounge with Carmine, indulging in the offerings of the young strippers there. Marriage is a concept I've long discarded, my 5 years with Janet serving as a testament to the belief that women are more trouble than they are worth once you tie the knot. Reflecting on my parents' warnings about regretting my involvement with Janet, I acknowledge the wisdom in their advice, often ignored by children despite its validity. It later came to light that Amanda Stata, Robert Tolson's former lover, had sent me the incriminating email, seeking revenge for being spurned by Robert in favor of Janet. In the end, it seems that Amanda got her revenge just as I did, underscoring the age-old adage about the wrath of a woman scorned.